The joke that ended my marriage wasn't even funny. "Don't worry about Nick," Marissa said to our dinner guests, her perfectly manicured hand resting on her flat stomach. "If I ever get pregnant again, I'll name the baby after my worst enemy. That way, at least one of us will be happy." The table erupted in laughter. Tom and Jennifer Chen thought it was hilarious. Even Paul, my best friend since high school, chuckled into his beer. But I sat there, fork halfway to my mouth, watching my wife of 12 years deliver what felt like a verbal slap across the face. If laughter is the best medicine, I was going to need a prescription. My name is Nick Foster, and I'm 38 years old. I manage IT systems for a mid-sized manufacturing company in Cleveland, Ohio. I fix computers, troubleshoot networks, and apparently, I'm married to a woman who thinks public humiliation is a form of entertainment. Marissa works in HR at a downtown consulting firm where she's perfected the art of corporate politics and passive-aggressive warfare. "That's brutal, Marissa," Jennifer said, wiping tears from her eyes. "Poor Nick." "Oh, he can take it," Marissa replied, not even looking at me. "He's got thick skin, don't you, honey?" I forced a smile and took a sip of wine. Thick as rhinoceros hide. But inside, something had shifted. The joke wasn't just mean, it was calculated. Marissa had been making these little digs for months now, always in front of other people, always designed to make me look weak or stupid. Tonight felt different, though. Tonight felt like a declaration of war. After Tom and Jennifer left, I helped Marissa clean up the dishes. Our 10-year-old daughter Emily was already in bed, probably reading under the covers with a flashlight like I used to do at her age. "Great dinner," I said, loading the dishwasher. "Thanks. I thought the salmon turned out well." Marissa was checking her phone, scrolling through social media with the focused intensity of a surgeon. The pregnancy joke was a nice touch. She looked up, her green eyes flashing with annoyance. "Oh, come on. You know I was just kidding around. Everyone thought it was funny. Everyone except your husband. Nick, don't be so sensitive. It's just humor." I dried my hands on a kitchen towel, studying her face. Marissa was beautiful. Long auburn hair, perfect features, the kind of woman who turned heads when she walked into a room. But lately, when I looked at her, all I saw was a stranger wearing my wife's face. "You're right," I said finally. "It was hilarious." She smiled and went back to her phone. "I'm glad you understand." But I didn't understand. Not yet. The next morning, Marissa left early for a breakfast meeting with her boss. I was getting Emily ready for school when I noticed something odd. Marissa's purse was still on the kitchen counter, and a receipt had fallen out. I picked it up, expecting to see coffee or gas. DNA testing services, $250. Dated 3 days ago. I stood there in my kitchen, holding a piece of paper that might as well have been a smoking gun. Emily came downstairs, backpack slung over her shoulder, chattering about a science project. "Dad, can you help me with my volcano tonight?" "Sure, sweetheart," I said, stuffing the receipt in my pocket. "We'll make it explosive." After dropping Emily at school, I drove to work on autopilot, my mind racing. A DNA test could mean anything. Maybe Marissa was having doubts about Emily's paternity, though that was impossible, since Emily looked exactly like me. Maybe she was pregnant and wasn't sure who the father was. Maybe she was planning something I couldn't even imagine yet. I spent the morning pretending to work while my thoughts churned. Around noon, I made a decision that would change everything. I drove home during lunch and did something I'd never done before. I violated my wife's privacy. It took me 20 minutes to install a keylogger on her laptop and clone her phone to mine. If Marissa was keeping secrets, I was going to find them. I'm not proud of what I did, but I'm not sorry either. Sometimes you have to fight dirty to uncover the truth. That evening, Marissa came home late again, claiming she'd been stuck in traffic. She seemed distracted during dinner, checking her phone every few minutes. "Everything okay at work?" I asked. "Just busy. You know how it is." but I was starting to suspect I didn't know how it was at all. After Emily went to bed, I retreated to my home office and opened the monitoring software. What I found made my hands shake with rage. Text messages, dozens of them, all to the same number. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. It's been too long. Nick suspects nothing. He's completely clueless. The hotel room is perfect, discreet and private. And then, the one that hit me like a punch to the gut. I love you too, Stefan. I always have. Stefan Madsen, Marissa's ex-boyfriend from college, the one she claimed to have lost touch with years ago. The successful tech entrepreneur who'd been sending her friend requests on social media. The man I'd stupidly encouraged her to reconnect with because I thought it would be healthy to maintain old friendships. Turns out, the punchline's on me. I kept reading, each message worse than the last. They'd been meeting for months. Hotel rooms, expensive restaurants, weekend business trips that were actually romantic getaways. Stefan was recently engaged to some socialite named Vanessa, but that wasn't stopping him from rekindling his relationship with my wife. But the worst part wasn't the affair itself. It was the group chat I discovered next. Ladies Who Lunch was what they called themselves. Marissa, her best friends Gina and Bree, and 3 other women I didn't recognize. They shared stories, gave each other advice, and bragged about their extramarital adventures like they were discussing restaurant reviews. Got away with another weekend in Chicago, Marissa had written. Nick bought the work conference story completely. You're so lucky, replied someone named Ashley. My husband is getting suspicious. Found a hotel receipt in my car. Just gaslight him, Gina had responded. Works every time. I sat back in my chair, staring at the screen. This wasn't just an affair. This was a conspiracy. A network of cheating wives who helped each other deceive their husbands, sharing tips and tactics like they were playing some kind of game. And I was the biggest fool of all. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I thought about confronting Marissa right then, marching upstairs and throwing the evidence in her face. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the programmer in me, the part that always wants to gather more data before making a decision. Or maybe it was the growing realization that my wife wasn't just unfaithful, she was cruel. The pregnancy joke, the public humiliation, the casual way she dismissed my feelings. This was who she really was. If Marissa wanted to play games, I could play too, but my rules would be different. I spent the rest of the night reading through months of messages, taking screenshots, building a digital dossier of my wife's betrayal. By dawn, I had enough evidence to destroy her in any divorce proceeding, but divorce felt too simple, too clean. Marissa had been humiliating me in public for months, making me look like a fool in front of our friends and family. She'd turned our marriage into her personal joke. Well, it was time for the punchline. And this time, I was going to be the one laughing. The next few days were the hardest of my life. I had to pretend everything was normal while my world crumbled around me. Marissa went about her routine, work, gym, dinner with the girls, while I played the role of the oblivious husband. But inside, I was planning. I started with research. Stefan Madsen owned a tech consulting company called Apex Solutions. His LinkedIn profile showed him speaking at conferences, posing with his fiancée Vanessa at charity galas, living the kind of life that screamed success and respectability. His company specialized in data security, which I found ironically fitting given how careless he was with his personal communications. Through the cloned phone, I watched Marissa's affair unfold in real time. They texted constantly. Good morning messages, lunch plans, explicit photos I wished I could unsee. Stefan was smooth. I had to give him that. He knew exactly what to say to make Marissa feel special, desired, appreciated. All the things I apparently wasn't doing anymore. Meeting the lawyer tomorrow, Stefan texted her Tuesday morning. Prenup revisions with V. She's getting suspicious about the wedding delays. Cold feet? Marissa replied. More like warm memories. Can't stop thinking about last weekend. I screenshot everything, building my case file like a detective. But I wasn't planning to take this to court. I had something much more satisfying in mind. Wednesday evening, Marissa announced she was going out with Gina and Bree for drinks. Girls' night, she said, kissing my cheek with lips that had been on another man. Don't wait up. I knew from her messages that she was actually meeting Stefan at the Marriott downtown, room 412. They'd booked it for the whole night. After Emily went to bed, I made my first move. I called Apex Solutions' main number, knowing it would go to voicemail after hours. When the recording finished, I spoke in my most official voice. This message is for Stefan Madsen. This is Detective Mike Harrison with the Cleveland Police Department. We've received some concerning information regarding a paternity dispute involving your company. Please call me back at your earliest convenience. This is a time-sensitive matter. I left a fake number that went to a burner phone I'd bought that afternoon. Then I called Stefan's personal cell and left the same message. The keylogger showed Stefan frantically texting Marissa within an hour. Something's wrong. Police called about paternity. Do you think Nick knows? Impossible, she replied. He's too stupid to figure it out. Too stupid. That stung more than it should have. I waited 2 days before making my next move. Stefan, rattled by the fake police call, had started acting paranoid. He'd canceled 2 meetings and postponed his wedding planning session with Vanessa. The stress was getting to him. Friday morning, I called Apex Solutions again, this time during business hours. Stefan Madsen's office? Answered a cheerful receptionist. Hi, this is Rick from Metropolitan Insurance. I need to speak with Mr. Madsen about a claim we've received. It involves potential paternity issues that could affect his coverage. I'm sorry, Mr. Madsen is in meetings all day. Can I take a message? Sure. Tell him Rick called about the foster paternity claim. He'll know what it means. I hung up, knowing that message would reach Stefan within minutes. And more importantly, it would reach other people in his office. People who might mention it to their spouses, their friends, their social circles. In a city like Cleveland, gossip traveled fast. The results were better than I'd hoped. Stefan's fiancée Vanessa called off their wedding planning appointment that afternoon. According to the messages I intercepted, she was having second thoughts and needed space to think. Stefan was panicking, begging her to reconsider, swearing he didn't know what the insurance calls were about. But I was just getting started. That weekend, while Marissa was at her book club, actually having lunch with Stefan at an expensive restaurant across town, I paid a visit to her parents. Bill and Carol lived in a retirement community in Lakewood, and they'd always been kind to me. They deserved to know what their daughter was really up to. Nick, Carol opened the door with a warm smile. What a nice surprise. Where's Marissa? Book club, I said, which was technically true from her perspective. I wanted to talk to you both about something important. We sat in their living room, surrounded by family photos and memories of happier times. I pulled out my phone and showed them the screenshots I'd carefully selected, nothing too explicit, but enough to make the situation clear. I'm so sorry you have to see this, I said, watching their faces change from confusion to horror. But I thought you should know before I decide what to do. Carol gasped, covering her mouth with her hands. Bill's face turned red with anger. Bill caught himself before swearing in front of his wife. How long has this been going on? Months, as far as I can tell. Maybe longer. And Emily? She doesn't know. I'm trying to protect her from this mess. Carol started crying. I can't believe Marissa would do this. We raised her better. I know you did. This isn't your fault. I left them with copies of the evidence and a promise to keep them updated. By Sunday evening, Marissa's phone was buzzing with angry calls from her mother. She ignored them, probably assuming it was typical family drama. She had no idea the walls were closing in. Monday brought a new development. Amanda Rodriguez, the HR director at Marissa's company, received an anonymous email containing screenshots of the Ladies Who Lunch group chat. The email expressed concern about employees using company time and resources for personal affairs and suggested a thorough investigation might be warranted. I watched through the keylogger as Marissa received a terse message from Amanda requesting a meeting to discuss professional conduct standards. Marissa was confused, texting her friends to see if anyone knew what it was about. None of them did. Yet. Tuesday afternoon, Marissa came home from work looking shaken. The meeting with HR hadn't gone well. Amanda had asked pointed questions about her relationship with company resources, her frequent absences, and her professional judgment. No accusations were made directly, but the message was clear. She was being watched. "Rough day?" I asked, playing the concerned husband. "Just work politics. You wouldn't understand." But I understood perfectly. I understood that Marissa was about to lose the promotion she'd been angling for. I understood that her reputation at the company was now in question. And I understood that this was only the beginning. That night, while Marissa slept beside me, I continued my work. I'd identified the other women in the group chat and started researching their husbands. Tom Chen, Jennifer's husband, worked at a law firm downtown. Ashley's husband, Mark, owned a small construction company. These men deserved to know what their wives were doing, but more importantly, I was starting to see a pattern. All of these women were connected to Stefan somehow. Some were former employees of his company. Others had met him through business networking events. One had even dated him briefly before her marriage. Stefan wasn't just sleeping with my wife. He was running some kind of operation, collecting married women like trophies, and I was going to bring the whole thing crashing down. Wednesday morning brought the first real crack in Marissa's composure. Vanessa had officially called off the engagement, citing irreconcilable differences and trust issues. Stefan was devastated, begging Marissa to run away with him, to leave everything behind and start fresh. "We could go to California," he texted. "I have contacts in Silicon Valley. We could build something together." "What about Emily?" Marissa replied. "Nick can have her. You said yourself he's a better parent anyway." I stared at that message for a long time. My wife was discussing abandoning our daughter like she was an inconvenient pet. The woman I'd loved, married, built a life with, was ready to throw it all away for a man who collected wives like baseball cards. That's when I decided to stop playing defense and go on the attack. Thursday evening, I made my move. I'd discovered that Stefan's car, a pristine 1967 Mustang he'd restored himself, was parked in a public garage downtown. He was having dinner with potential investors, trying to salvage his business relationships after the engagement scandal. I brought my toolbox. It took me 40 minutes to completely disable the car without causing permanent damage. I removed the spark plugs, disconnected the battery, and filled the exhaust pipe with expanding foam. For good measure, I used super glue on every lock and handle. The car would run again eventually, but it would cost Stefan thousands to fix. On the windshield, I left a note written in lipstick: "Cheaters never prosper." Friday morning, Stefan discovered the damage. His rage was immediate and volcanic. He called the police, filed a report, and spent the day dealing with tow trucks and mechanics. The investors he was supposed to meet that afternoon canceled, citing concerns about his personal stability. Marissa was frantic, texting him constantly, worried about retaliation. But Stefan had no idea who was responsible. The garage had security cameras, but I'd worn a baseball cap and kept my face down. To anyone watching, I was just another mechanic working on a car. "This has to be connected to the paternity thing," Stefan texted Marissa. "Someone knows about us." "Who would do this?" she replied. "I don't know, but when I find out, they're going to pay." I smiled as I read that. Stefan had no idea he was threatening the wrong person. He thought some unknown enemy was attacking him from the shadows. He never suspected the enemy was sleeping in his lover's house, making breakfast for his lover's daughter, living a double life just like him. But unlike Stefan, I was good at it. The weekend brought new developments. Tom Chen had received copies of his wife Jennifer's messages, delivered anonymously to his law office. Mark had found printouts of Ashley's group chat posts taped to his construction trailer. One by one, the ladies who lunch were being exposed to their husbands. The group chat exploded with panic and accusations. "Someone's targeting us," Gina wrote. "This can't be a coincidence." "Who would do this?" Ashley demanded. "Maybe it's one of the husbands," Bree suggested. "Maybe someone figured it out." They were right, of course, but they were looking in the wrong direction, suspecting each other instead of the real threat. Marissa was the most paranoid, convinced that Stefan's enemies were coming after her too. Sunday evening, I was helping Emily with her homework when Marissa's phone rang. It was her mother calling for the third time that day. This time, Marissa answered. "Hi, Mom. No, I can't talk right now. Emily has school tomorrow." I could hear Carol's voice through the phone, high-pitched and upset. Marissa's face went white. "What are you talking about? What photos?" More angry words from Carol. Marissa looked at me, then at Emily, then back at the phone. "I'll call you back," she said, hanging up quickly. "Everything okay?" I asked innocently. "Fine, just family drama." But it wasn't fine. Marissa spent the rest of the evening pacing the house, checking her phone obsessively, jumping at every sound. She knew something was wrong, but she couldn't figure out what. That night, after she finally fell asleep, I sat in my office and reviewed my progress. In less than 2 weeks, I'd destroyed Stefan's engagement, damaged his business relationships, cost him thousands in car repairs, and exposed half the cheating wives in their little group. Marissa was under investigation at work, estranged from her parents, and living in constant fear of discovery. But I was just getting started. Phase 1 had been about gathering intelligence and applying pressure. Phase 2 would be about public humiliation and total destruction. Marissa wanted to play games. She wanted to make jokes at my expense. Game on. Monday morning brought the news I'd been waiting for. Marissa didn't get the promotion. Amanda Rodriguez called her into the office and delivered the news personally. The position was going to someone with better judgment and fewer distractions. Marissa came home that evening looking like she'd been hit by a truck. Her carefully constructed professional image was crumbling, and she couldn't understand why. She'd always been the golden girl at her company, the one everyone expected to climb the corporate ladder with ease. "They gave the promotion to Janet," she told me over dinner, her voice hollow. "Janet, who's been there half as long as me." "That's terrible," I said, cutting Emily's chicken. "Did they give you a reason?" "Something about company culture and professional standards. It's complete bullshit." Emily looked up from her plate. "Mom, you said a bad word." "Sorry, sweetheart. Mommy's just frustrated about work." I watched Marissa push food around her plate, her appetite gone. Part of me almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Then I remembered the group chat, the cruel jokes about my intelligence, the casual way she'd discussed abandoning our daughter. The sympathy evaporated quickly. That night, while Marissa took a long bath to process her disappointment, I made my next move. I'd been monitoring Stefan's business communications, and I knew he was desperate to land a new client to offset the damage to his reputation. He had a presentation scheduled for Wednesday with a major manufacturing company. I sent an anonymous email to the company's CEO, attaching screenshots of Stefan's group chat messages and a brief explanation of his extracurricular activities. The subject line read, "Character concerns regarding Apex Solutions." By Tuesday morning, the meeting was canceled. Stefan was spiraling. His fiancée was gone, his business was failing, and he couldn't figure out who was sabotaging him. He started drinking heavily, posting rambling messages on social media about enemies in the shadows and corporate espionage. Marissa was getting scared. Her lover was becoming unstable, her career was stalling, and strange things kept happening around her. She started looking over her shoulder, jumping at unexpected phone calls, checking and rechecking her locks at night. "I think someone's watching me," she told Gina during one of their lunch meetings. I knew this because I was watching her, reading every text, monitoring every call. "You're being paranoid," Gina replied. But Gina was wrong. Marissa's paranoia was completely justified. Wednesday afternoon, I escalated things. I called Marissa's office, disguising my voice and claiming to be a private investigator. "I'm calling about the Marissa Foster investigation," I told the receptionist. "I need to verify her employment status for our client." "Investigation?" The receptionist sounded confused. "I'm not sure what you mean." "The adultery case. Her husband hired us to document her extramarital activities. We have photos, hotel records, the works. I just need to confirm she still works there." I hung up before the receptionist could respond, knowing the conversation would be all over the office within an hour. By closing time, half of Marissa's colleagues thought she was being investigated by a private detective. The psychological pressure was working. Marissa came home that evening looking haggard, her usual composure completely gone. "People are acting weird at work," she told me, "like they know something I don't." "Maybe you're overthinking it," I suggested. "You've been under a lot of stress lately." "Maybe." But she didn't sound convinced. That night, I implemented the next phase of my plan. I'd been studying the lease on Marissa's apartment, the one she thought I didn't know about, the love nest she'd rented for her meetings with Stefan. The lease was in her name, paid for with money from our joint account. I called the landlord, identifying myself as Marissa's husband and claiming there was a family emergency. I explained that we needed to terminate the lease immediately due to financial hardship, and that I was authorized to handle the matter since I was the primary breadwinner. It wasn't entirely legal, but it wasn't entirely illegal either. The landlord was sympathetic and agreed to let us out of the lease with 30 days' notice. I forged Marissa's signature on the termination paperwork and had it delivered that same night. Thursday morning, Marissa received a call from the landlord thanking her for being so understanding about the lease termination. She was completely bewildered. "There must be some mistake," she said. "I never terminated any lease." But the paperwork was already filed. The apartment she'd been using for her affair was gone, along with the security deposit. Stefan was furious when he found out. Without their private meeting place, their relationship became much more complicated. They couldn't risk being seen together in public, not with Stefan's reputation already in shambles. "We need to be more careful," Marissa texted him. "Something's not right." "You think?" Stefan replied. "Someone's been systematically destroying my life for weeks." They were both scared now, looking over their shoulders, suspicious of everyone around them. But they still hadn't figured out who was hunting them. Friday brought a new development. Paul, my best friend, called to invite me for drinks after work. We met at O'Malley's, a dive bar near the lake where we'd been going since college. "You seem different lately," Paul said, studying my face over his beer. "More focused. Just dealing with some personal stuff. Want to talk about it?" I considered telling him everything. Paul was a good friend, and he'd always been skeptical of Marissa. But I wasn't ready to share my plans yet. The fewer people who knew, the better. "Maybe later," I said. "Right now I'm just trying to figure some things out." Paul nodded, accepting my evasion. We talked about work, sports, anything but the war I was fighting at home. But as we were leaving, Paul grabbed my arm. "Whatever you're planning," he said quietly, "be careful. I've seen that look before, back when I was on the force. It's the look of a man who's decided to take justice into his own hands." I met his eyes. Sometimes that's the only justice available. He held my gaze for a long moment, then nodded. "Just remember, revenge is a dish best served cold. Don't let it burn you in the process. I appreciated the warning, but it was too late for caution. I was already committed to this path, and I was going to see it through to the end. Saturday morning, I made my boldest move yet. I knew Marissa was meeting Stefan at his house while his neighbors were at work. They thought they were safe there, hidden behind his privacy fence and security system. They were wrong. I parked down the street and used a high-powered camera with a telephoto lens to document their reunion. The photos were explicit enough to be damaging, but not so graphic as to be illegal. I captured them kissing in his doorway, embracing by his pool, sharing what looked like an intimate conversation on his back patio. But the photos weren't the real prize. While I was watching them, I noticed something interesting. Stefan's mail was piling up in his box, and his newspapers were scattered on his driveway. For a man obsessed with his image and reputation, he was letting his property maintenance slip. That gave me an idea. Sunday evening, while Stefan was at a business dinner trying to salvage his remaining client relationships, I paid another visit to his house. This time, I brought more than a camera. I spent 2 hours systematically vandalizing his property in ways that would be expensive to fix, but hard to trace. I poured concrete mix down his pool drains, guaranteeing thousands in plumbing repairs. I planted fast-growing weeds in his manicured garden beds. I loosened the screws on his fence posts so they'd collapse in the next strong wind. And on his front door, I left another lipstick message. Karma is a bastard. Monday morning brought chaos. Stefan discovered the damage and flew into a rage that could probably be heard 3 blocks away. He called the police again, but there was no evidence pointing to any specific person. The security cameras had mysteriously malfunctioned. I'd used a signal jammer to disrupt them while I worked. Marissa was terrified. Her lover was becoming increasingly unstable, her own life was falling apart, and she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was orchestrating everything. She was right, of course, but she still had no idea who. That afternoon, I received a text from an unknown number. When I opened it, I found a photo of myself taken from across the street from my office building. Below it was a message. We need to talk. Someone was watching me now. I looked around the office, suddenly aware of every person, every shadow, every potential threat. Had Stefan figured out who was behind his troubles? Had he hired someone to investigate? My phone buzzed again. Another message. Parking garage. Level 3. 1 hour. Come alone. I stared at the screen, my mind racing. This could be a trap, an ambush, a setup for something worse. But I couldn't ignore it. If my cover was blown, I needed to know how much they knew. An hour later, I walked into the parking garage with my keys in one hand and my phone in the other, ready to call 911 at the first sign of trouble. Level 3 was dimly lit and mostly empty, just a few cars scattered around the concrete space. Over here. I turned toward the voice and saw a figure step out from behind a pillar. It was a man I didn't recognize, middle-aged, wearing a suit that had seen better days. He looked like a cop or a private investigator, someone who'd spent years dealing with other people's problems. You're Nick Foster, he said. It wasn't a question. Who's asking? Someone who knows what you've been up to. He held up a tablet, showing me surveillance photos of myself outside Stefan's house, at the parking garage where I'd sabotaged his car, walking away from various locations where accidents had befallen my wife's lover. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you don't. He smiled, but it wasn't friendly. Look, Nick, I'm not here to bust you. Actually, I'm impressed. You've been running a pretty sophisticated operation here. Very professional. What do you want? Information. See, I represent some other interested parties. Husbands who found themselves in similar situations. We've been watching Stefan Madsen for a while now, and we've noticed his recent run of bad luck. My heart was pounding, but I kept my expression neutral. I still don't know what you're talking about. Stefan's been running a little side business, the man continued. Nothing official, you understand. But he's been collecting married women, using them to gather information about their husbands' businesses, their finances, their weaknesses. Industrial espionage with a personal touch. This was new information. I'd suspected Stefan was manipulating multiple women, but I hadn't realized the scope of his operation. And you know this how? Because my client hired me to investigate when his wife started acting suspicious. We followed the trail back to Stefan, discovered the whole network. Your wife, Jennifer Chen, Ashley Martinez, at least 6 others we know about. What does this have to do with me? We know you're the one who's been taking Stefan apart piece by piece. And we want to help. I studied his face, trying to read his intentions. Why? Because Stefan's hurt a lot of people. Destroyed marriages, ruined businesses, blackmailed good men who didn't deserve it. You're not the only one who wants to see him burn. He handed me a business card. Think about it, Nick. You've done good work so far, but you're just one man. We're a team. We have resources, connections, information you could use. I took the card without looking at it. And what do you want in return? When you bring Stefan down, and we both know you're going to, we want to be there to document it. We want evidence we can use to help our clients, proof that Stefan's network is finished. I work alone. I understand. But the offer stands. When you're ready to end this, give me a call. We can make sure Stefan's fall is complete and permanent. He walked away, leaving me alone in the parking garage with more questions than answers. I looked at the business card. Mike Harrison, Private Investigations. The same name I'd used when I called Stefan pretending to be a cop. Either it was a coincidence, or this Mike Harrison had a sense of humor about his work. I drove home in a daze, trying to process what I'd learned. Stefan wasn't just a cheating boyfriend. He was running some kind of organized operation, using affairs to gather intelligence and leverage. That explained why all the women in the group chat were connected to him somehow. They weren't just friends sharing gossip, they were unwitting assets in his scheme, and I wasn't the only husband who'd figured it out. That night, I lay in bed next to my sleeping wife, staring at the ceiling and planning my next moves. The game had just gotten bigger, more complicated, more dangerous. But it had also gotten more personal. Stefan hadn't just stolen my wife. He'd turned her into a weapon against me. Now it was time to return the favor. The revelation about Stefan's operation changed everything. I wasn't just fighting for my marriage anymore. I was fighting against a systematic predator who'd been using women like my wife to destroy families and businesses. The scope of his crimes made my revenge feel less like personal vendetta and more like public service. I spent Tuesday morning researching Stefan's business network, using the information Mike Harrison had given me to connect the dots. Ashley Martinez's husband, Mark, owned a construction company that had mysteriously lost several major contracts over the past year. Jennifer Chen's husband, Tom, had been passed over for partnership at his law firm after confidential client information somehow leaked to competitors. Stefan was using intimate conversations to gather intelligence, then selling that information to his business contacts. The affairs weren't just about physical attraction, they were about money, power, and control. That afternoon, I made a decision that would accelerate everything. I called in sick to work and drove to Marissa's office building. Her company was hosting their quarterly all-hands meeting, where they celebrated achievements and announced new initiatives. I knew from her calendar that she'd be there, along with most of her colleagues. I also knew the building's security system, having done some contract work for them 2 years earlier. Getting into the conference room was easier than it should have been. I waited until the meeting started, then slipped in through the service entrance, wearing a maintenance uniform I'd bought online. The room was dark except for the projector screen, and everyone's attention was focused on the presentation. I made my way to the AV booth and connected my laptop to their system. Then I waited for the perfect moment. Amanda Rodriguez was in the middle of discussing company values and professional integrity when I struck. The corporate presentation disappeared, replaced by screenshots of the Ladies Who Lunch group chat. The room erupted in chaos. Marissa's face went white as her colleagues saw her messages about cheating on her husband, lying about business trips, and manipulating her family. The explicit details of her affair with Stefan were displayed in high definition for everyone to see. "What is this?" Amanda demanded, but I was already gone, slipping out through the service exit before security could react. I drove home and waited for the fallout. Marissa arrived 2 hours later, her face streaked with tears and her career effectively over. She'd been suspended pending a full investigation, and her colleagues were treating her like a pariah. "Someone hacked the system," she sobbed to me, still not realizing who was responsible. "They showed everyone my private messages." "That's horrible," I said, holding her while she cried. "Who would do something like that?" "I don't know, but my life is ruined, my career, my reputation, everything." I patted her back and made soothing sounds, playing the supportive husband, while inside I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. This was what she deserved for making me the punchline of her jokes. But I wasn't done yet. That evening, while Marissa was in the shower trying to wash away her humiliation, I received a call from Mike Harrison. "Impressive work today," he said. "Very public, very effective. How did you—" "We've been monitoring Stefan's communications. He's panicking, trying to figure out if the attack on your wife is connected to his other problems. He's scared his whole operation is about to be exposed." "Good. He should be scared. There's something else you should know. Stefan's planning something desperate. He wants to meet with all his assets tomorrow night. Some kind of emergency gathering to figure out how to contain the damage." This was the opportunity I'd been waiting for. "Where?" "His house, 8 o'clock. He's telling them it's a support group meeting, but we think he's planning to cut ties with anyone who might be a liability. Including my wife. Especially your wife. She's the most exposed now." I thought about this for a moment. Stefan was going to abandon Marissa, just like he'd abandoned his fiancée when things got complicated. He was a coward who used people and discarded them when they became inconvenient. "I'll be there," I said. "Nick, wait. This could be dangerous. If Stefan realizes you're behind everything—" "Let me worry about Stefan." I hung up and started planning the final act of my revenge. Wednesday evening, I told Marissa I was going out with Paul for drinks. She barely acknowledged me, too wrapped up in her own misery to pay attention to my movements. I drove to Stefan's neighborhood and parked 3 blocks away, then made my way through the shadows to his backyard. The house was lit up like a Christmas tree, and I could see figures moving around inside. Through the windows, I counted at least 8 people: Stefan, Marissa, and the other women from their network, plus a few men I didn't recognize. I set up my camera equipment in the bushes and started recording. Whatever happened tonight, I wanted it documented. The meeting started cordially enough, with Stefan playing the role of concerned leader, trying to help his friends through a difficult time. But I could read his body language, the tension in his shoulders, the way he kept checking his phone. He was planning to throw them all under the bus. "We need to be smart about this," I heard him say through the window I'd cracked open earlier. "Someone's targeting us, and we need to figure out who." "It has to be one of the husbands," Ashley said. "My Mark's been acting suspicious lately." "Mine too," added Jennifer. "Tom keeps asking questions about my schedule." I watched Marissa sitting quietly in the corner, looking smaller and more fragile than I'd ever seen her. Part of me almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "The important thing," Stefan continued, "is that we stick together. No one talks to anyone outside this group. No confessions, no guilt trips, no trying to make things right with your families. We weather this storm together." But even as he said it, I could see him calculating, deciding which of these women were worth protecting and which were expendable. Marissa, with her very public exposure, was clearly in the expendable category. That's when I made my move. I'd brought more than just a camera. Hidden in my jacket was a portable PA system, the kind used for outdoor events and political rallies. I'd also brought a surprise that would change everything. I activated the PA system and spoke into the microphone, my voice booming across the neighborhood. "Good evening, Stefan. This is your conscience calling." The reaction inside the house was immediate and electric. People jumped up, looked around frantically, tried to figure out where the voice was coming from. "You've been a very bad boy, Stefan, stealing wives, destroying families, using people for your little business schemes. But tonight, that all ends." Stefan rushed to the window, peering out into the darkness, but I was well hidden, and my voice was coming from speakers I'd placed around his property. "Who is this?" he shouted. "What do you want?" "Justice, Stefan. Sweet, cold justice. See, I know all about your operation. The affairs, the intelligence gathering, the blackmail. I know about the husbands whose businesses you've destroyed, the families you've torn apart." The women in the house were panicking now, realizing they'd been used as pawns in a larger game. Marissa was crying, finally understanding the true scope of what she'd been involved in. "But here's the thing, Stefan. You picked the wrong family to mess with. Because I'm not just any husband. I'm the husband who fights back." That's when I revealed my trump card. On every phone in the house, I'd hacked their devices weeks ago. Photos started appearing. Pictures of Stefan with each of the women, explicit messages, financial records showing payments to private investigators, evidence of his entire operation. "Everyone in this room has been betrayed," I announced, "not just by their spouses, but by the man who's supposed to be leading them. Stefan's been using all of you, gathering information about your husbands, selling their secrets to business competitors." The chaos inside the house was beautiful to watch. The women turned on Stefan, demanding explanations. The men, his business associates, realized they'd been exposed and started backing toward the door. "Check your phones," I said. "See the evidence for yourselves. Stefan Madsen isn't your friend or your lover. He's a predator who's been feeding off your marriages like a parasite." Stefan was shouting now, trying to regain control, but it was too late. His carefully constructed network was collapsing in real time. That's when I played my final card. "Oh, and Stefan? Your fiancée Vanessa is here with me. She'd like to say a few words." I'd contacted Vanessa earlier that day, shown her the evidence of Stefan's operation, and convinced her to help me bring him down. She was as angry as I was, maybe angrier. Her voice came through the speakers, cold and precise. "Stefan, you lying piece of garbage. I know everything. The affairs, the business schemes, all of it. I've already turned over all your financial records to the FBI. They're very interested in your industrial espionage activities." The FBI part was a bluff, but Stefan didn't know that. He went pale, stumbling backward like he'd been physically struck. "The wedding's off, obviously," Vanessa continued. "But more than that, I'm going to make sure everyone in our social circle knows exactly what kind of man you are. Your business is finished, your reputation is destroyed, and your little harem is about to scatter to the winds." Inside the house, the meeting had devolved into complete chaos. Women were screaming at Stefan, men were fleeing toward the exits, and Stefan himself was having what looked like a complete nervous breakdown. I watched my wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, realize that her affair partner was a sociopath who'd been using her all along. She looked broken, defeated, smaller than I'd ever seen her. But I wasn't done yet. "Ladies," I announced, "you might want to check your bank accounts. Stefan's been using your personal information to open credit cards and take out loans in your names. Identity theft is a federal crime." This wasn't true for all of them, but I knew it was true for at least 3. Including Marissa. I'd discovered the financial fraud during my investigation of Stefan's business dealings. The remaining women in the house went ballistic. They surrounded Stefan like a pack of wolves, demanding answers, threatening violence. He tried to explain, to justify his actions, but there was no coming back from this level of betrayal. I packed up my equipment and started walking back to my car, leaving Stefan to face the consequences of his actions. Behind me, I could hear sirens in the distance. Someone had called the police about the disturbance. Perfect timing. As I drove home, I felt a strange sense of peace. The war was over, and I had won. Stefan's operation was destroyed, his reputation was in ruins, and his criminal activities were about to be exposed to law enforcement. The network of cheating wives had collapsed, and their husbands would finally know the truth. Marissa would come home eventually, probably tonight, and we'd have to face each other honestly for the first time in months. I wasn't sure what I'd say to her, or what she'd say to me, but for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I was ready to find out. The joke was finally over, and this time, I was the one laughing. I was sitting in my kitchen at midnight when Marissa finally came home. She looked like she'd aged 10 years in the past few hours, makeup smeared, hair disheveled, eyes red from crying. She stood in the doorway for a long moment, studying my face. "It was you," she said quietly. "All of it. The car, the apartment, the presentation at work. Everything." I took a sip of coffee and nodded. "Everything. How long have you known?" "About the affair? 2 weeks? About Stefan's operation? 3 days? About what kind of person you really are? Apparently, I'm a slow learner." She slumped into the chair across from me, looking defeated. "I never meant for it to go this far." "Which part? The cheating, the lying, or the identity theft?" Her head snapped up. "What identity theft?" "Stefan's been using your information to open credit accounts. Check your credit report tomorrow, assuming you're not in jail by then." The color drained from her face. "That's impossible. Stefan would do anything to make money and gain leverage over people. You were just another mark, Marissa, another useful idiot in his stable of married women." She started crying again, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no regret, no desire to comfort her. The woman sitting across from me was a stranger who happened to share my last name. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now you pack a bag and find somewhere else to stay. Tomorrow we call lawyers and start divorce proceedings. Emily stays with me. I've already documented your plan to abandon her for Stefan." "I never said I would abandon Emily." "Nick can have her. You said yourself he's a better parent anyway." "That was you, texting Stefan last week about running away to California." She buried her face in her hands. I was confused, overwhelmed. I didn't mean it. "You meant every word. Just like you meant it when you called me stupid in your group chat. Just like you meant it when you made that pregnancy joke in front of our friends." I stood up, suddenly tired of the conversation. "The guest bedroom is yours for tonight. Tomorrow you find somewhere else to go." "Nick, please, can't we try to work this out? Go to counseling, start over?" I looked at her for a long moment, remembering the woman I'd fallen in love with 15 years ago. That woman was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize or respect. "You made your choice, Marissa. Live with it." I went upstairs, leaving her alone with the wreckage of her life. The next morning brought a parade of consequences. Stefan's story was all over social media, thanks to the photos and recordings I'd captured the night before. Someone had live-streamed part of the chaos from inside his house, and the video was going viral. My phone started ringing at 6 a.m. Reporters, lawyers, private investigators, and at least 3 different law enforcement agencies all wanted to talk to me. I ignored most of the calls, but I did answer when Mike Harrison called. "Hell of a show last night," he said. "Very thorough, very public." "Is it over? For Stefan?" "Absolutely. The FBI is actually interested now. Turns out industrial espionage is something they take seriously. He'll be lucky if he stays out of federal prison." "And the others?" "The wives are scattered to the winds. Half of them are filing for divorce. The other half are begging their husbands for forgiveness. The business associates have all cut ties with Stefan. His company's finished. I felt a grim satisfaction. Good. There's one more thing you should know. We found evidence that Stefan was planning to blackmail you directly. He had photos of you sabotaging his car, surveillance footage of you at his house. He was building a case to destroy you if you got too close to the truth. But he never used it. Because you moved faster than he expected. You turned the tables before he could spring his trap. After hanging up, I checked the news coverage online. Stefan's story was everywhere, portrayed as a cautionary tale about modern infidelity and digital age crime. Several business publications were running exposés about industrial espionage in the tech sector. A few marriage counselors were using the story to promote their services. I was mentioned in some articles as the wronged husband who fought back, but most reporters didn't have my name or details. I preferred it that way. Emily came downstairs for breakfast, chattering about a school project and seemingly oblivious to the drama unfolding around her. Marissa had already left, probably to find a hotel or crash with one of her friends. "Where's Mom?" Emily asked. "She had to go to work early," I said, which was technically possible, if not likely. "It's just you and me for breakfast." "Can we have pancakes?" "Absolutely." As I cooked, I thought about how to explain the coming changes to my daughter. Emily was smart and observant. She'd probably already noticed the tension between her parents, but she didn't need to know the ugly details, at least not yet. The doorbell rang while we were eating. I opened it to find Tom Chen standing on my porch, looking haggard and angry. "We need to talk," he said. I invited him in, sent Emily upstairs to get ready for school, and poured Tom a cup of coffee. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "Jennifer told me everything," he said. "The affair, the group chat, Stefan's operation. She's begging for forgiveness, swears it didn't mean anything." "What are you going to do?" "I don't know. Part of me wants to throw her out, file for divorce, take the kids, and never look back. But another part of me—" He shrugged helplessly. "We've been married 18 years. We have 3 kids together. How do you just throw that away?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Everyone's situation is different." "How are you so calm about this? Your wife was cheating too, but you seem, I don't know, at peace with it." I thought about that for a moment. Because I fought back. I didn't just sit there and take it. I made them pay for what they did. And now? Now I'm free. Free from the lies, the manipulation, the constant feeling that something was wrong but not knowing what. It hurts, but it's honest pain. That's better than living a lie. Tom nodded slowly. "Jennifer wants to go to counseling, says she'll do anything to save our marriage." "Do you believe her?" "I want to. But every time I look at her, I see those text messages. The things she said about me, about our family. How do you get past that?" "Maybe you don't. Maybe some things can't be forgiven." He finished his coffee and stood up. "Thanks for talking. And Nick, what you did to Stefan. I'm not saying it was right, but I understand it. He had it coming." After Tom left, I drove Emily to school and then went to see a lawyer. Carla Morrison had been recommended by Paul. She specialized in high-conflict divorces and had a reputation for being ruthless, but fair. "You've documented everything?" she asked, reviewing the evidence I'd brought. "Everything. The affair, the financial fraud, the plan to abandon our daughter, plus Stefan's entire operation. This is very thorough, almost suspiciously thorough." She looked at me over her glasses. "I don't suppose you want to tell me how you obtained some of this information?" "I'm a computer professional. I notice things." "Uh-huh. Well, regardless of how you got it, this evidence gives us significant leverage. Custody shouldn't be a problem, and the financial settlement will heavily favor you. I don't want her money, I just want my daughter and a clean break." "That's admirable, but don't be too generous. Your wife made choices that have consequences. Make sure those consequences are proportional to the damage she caused." I spent the rest of the day handling practical matters, changing passwords, separating bank accounts, securing Emily's future. It felt good to take action instead of just reacting to events. That evening, Marissa called to ask if she could come by to get more of her things. I agreed, but insisted that Emily stay at Paul's house during the visit. I didn't want our daughter exposed to any more drama than necessary. Marissa arrived with 2 large suitcases and a defeated expression. She moved through the house like a ghost, packing her belongings with mechanical precision. "The FBI called me today," she said as she folded clothes. "They want to interview me about Stefan's business practices. Are you going to cooperate?" "Do I have a choice? My lawyer says it's better to get ahead of this, show that I was a victim too." "Were you? A victim?" She stopped packing and looked at me. "You really think I knew about the identity theft and the business espionage?" "I think you knew Stefan was married and you didn't care. I think you knew you were hurting me and Emily and you didn't care. I think you made a series of selfish choices and now you're facing the consequences." "You're right," she said quietly. "I was selfish. I was cruel. I treated you like garbage and made jokes about it with my friends. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want you to know that I'm sorry." "Apologies don't undo damage, Marissa. They're just words." "I know, but they're all I have left." She finished packing and headed toward the door. At the threshold, she turned back. "For what it's worth, you were a good husband. Better than I deserved. I hope someday you can find someone who appreciates that. I hope someday you can figure out who you really are. Because the person you became these past months, that's not someone I ever want to see again." She nodded and left, taking her suitcases and her regrets with her. I stood in the empty house, listening to the silence, feeling the weight of 15 years of marriage settling around me like dust. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, legal proceedings, custody arrangements, the difficult task of explaining everything to Emily. But tonight, for the first time in months, I was alone with my thoughts and my choices. I'd declared war on the people who'd betrayed me, and I'd won. The victory felt hollow in some ways, but it was still a victory. Stefan was ruined, his operation destroyed, his reputation in ashes. Marissa was facing federal investigation, financial ruin, and social ostracism. The network of cheating wives had collapsed, and their husbands finally knew the truth. I'd kept my promise to myself. I'd made them pay. Now it was time to figure out what came next. 3 weeks later, I thought it was over. Stefan had disappeared from social media, his company had filed for bankruptcy, and Marissa was living in a studio apartment across town, trying to find a job that would hire someone with her reputation. The FBI investigation was ongoing, but my part in it was finished. I was wrong about it being over. The call came on a Thursday evening while I was helping Emily with her math homework. The number was blocked, but I answered anyway. "Nick Foster?" The voice was unfamiliar, nervous. "Who's asking?" "My name is David Park. I think we need to meet. It's about Stefan Madsen and your wife." "Ex-wife, and Stefan's old news. Whatever he's planning now, I'm not interested." "He's planning to destroy you. He has evidence of everything you did. The car vandalism, the hacking, the harassment. He's building a criminal case against you." "Where did you get this information?" "I work for Stefan. Worked for him." "Look, can we meet? There are things you need to know, things about his operation that go deeper than you realize." Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet David at a coffee shop downtown. Emily was spending the night at Paul's house, so I had the freedom to move around without worrying about her safety. David Park turned out to be a thin, nervous man in his 30s, the kind of person who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else in the world. He was clutching a laptop bag like it contained nuclear secrets. "Stefan's not finished," he said without preamble. "He's been planning his comeback, and you're the key to everything." "Explain." David opened his laptop and showed me a series of files. Financial records, surveillance photos, recorded phone conversations. Stefan had been documenting my revenge campaign from the beginning, building a comprehensive case that painted me as a dangerous stalker and cybercriminal. "He's going to the police tomorrow," David said. "He has enough evidence to have you arrested for harassment, vandalism, hacking, and maybe even extortion." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because Stefan destroyed my life too. I was his business partner, but he threw me under the bus when everything collapsed, blamed me for the security breaches, the leaked information, all of it. I lost everything, my job, my reputation, my fiancée. I studied the evidence David was showing me. It was comprehensive and damaging. Stefan had been more paranoid than I'd realized, documenting everything in case he needed leverage later." "What does he want?" I asked. "Revenge. He wants to see you in prison, wants to destroy your relationship with your daughter, wants to prove that he's smarter than everyone who underestimated him. And you're helping me because I have something he doesn't know about, something that could end this permanently." David pulled out a flash drive. "Stefan's been running his operation for 5 years, not just the past few months. This contains evidence of dozens of affairs, hundreds of victims, millions in financial fraud, industrial espionage, identity theft, blackmail, tax evasion, everything. Why didn't you turn this over to the FBI?" "Because I was complicit. I helped build the systems he used, manage the data, process the payments. If this comes out, I go to prison too. But if Stefan destroys you, he'll come after me next. I'd rather take my chances with federal prosecution than let him pick us off one by one." I stared at the flash drive, understanding what David was offering. Mutually assured destruction. If Stefan tried to destroy me, I could release information that would put him in federal prison for decades. "There's something else," David said. "Stefan's not working alone anymore. He's partnered with someone new, someone with resources and connections. They're planning something big." "Who?" "I don't know, but they've been meeting regularly, and Stefan's been more confident lately. Like he has backup, protection." That night, I went home and studied David's files. The scope of Stefan's operation was staggering. He'd been systematically targeting successful men, seducing their wives, gathering intelligence, and selling that information to competitors and criminals. The affair with Marissa wasn't personal, it was just business. But his plan for revenge against me was very personal. According to the documents, Stefan was going to present evidence to the police that would paint me as an unhinged stalker who'd escalated from harassment to property destruction to potentially violent confrontation. He had photos, recordings, digital forensics, everything needed to build a compelling case. I had to admit, it was brilliant. Stefan was going to use the legal system to destroy me, turning my own actions against me while positioning himself as the victim. But I wasn't going to let that happen. Friday morning, I called in sick to work and started planning my final move. If Stefan wanted to escalate this to a legal battle, I'd give him a war he'd never forget. I started by contacting every journalist who'd covered the original story, offering them exclusive access to David's files. The evidence of Stefan's 5-year criminal operation was explosive, exactly the kind of story that could launch careers and win awards. Then I reached out to the FBI agents who'd been investigating Stefan's business practices. David's files contained evidence of federal crimes that would make their case airtight. Finally, I called Mike Harrison, the private investigator who'd been tracking Stefan for his other clients. "I need your help with something," I said. "Something big." "What do you have in mind?" "Stefan's planning to have me arrested tomorrow. I want to turn the tables one last time." "What do you need?" "Media coverage. Lots of it. When Stefan walks into that police station, I want every reporter in the city to know about it, and I want them to have the full story about his criminal operation." Mike was quiet for a moment. "That's risky. If this backfires, you could end up in federal prison yourself. If I do nothing, I end up in county jail and lose my daughter. I'd rather go down fighting." "All right, I'm in. What's the plan?" We spent the rest of Friday coordinating what would essentially be a media ambush. Mike used his contacts to alert every major news outlet in the city about Stefan's upcoming police visit. I prepared comprehensive evidence packages for each reporter, including David's files and my own documentation of Stefan's crimes. Saturday morning, Stefan walked into Cleveland Police Headquarters, expecting to file a complaint against a dangerous stalker. Instead, he found a media circus waiting for him. "Mr. Madsen," shouted a reporter from Channel 5. "Is it true that you've been running a criminal organization that targets married women? Mr. Madsen, what's your response to allegations of industrial espionage and identity theft?" Stefan tried to push through the crowd, but the reporters surrounded him like sharks. Every question was based on information from David's files. Every accusation was backed by documented evidence. I watched the coverage from my living room, Emily beside me eating cereal and asking why Mommy's friend was on TV. I told her it was just boring grown-up stuff and changed the channel to cartoons, but I kept monitoring the news on my phone. Stefan had made it inside the police station, but his plan was already falling apart. The detectives he'd hoped to convince were now more interested in the evidence against him than his complaints about me. By noon, the FBI had issued a statement confirming that Stefan Madsen was a person of interest in a federal investigation involving cybercrime and financial fraud. By evening, 3 different news programs had run exposés about his criminal operation. Stefan's attempt to destroy me had backfired spectacularly. Instead of making me look like a dangerous stalker, he'd reminded everyone that he was a criminal who'd hurt dozens of families. But the real victory came Monday morning, when I received a call from Detective Sarah Williams. "Mr. Foster, I'm calling about the complaint Stefan Madsen filed against you." My heart stopped. "Yes?" "We've reviewed his evidence and compared it to the information provided by the FBI. Given Mr. Madsen's credibility issues and the ongoing federal investigation, we've decided not to pursue charges at this time." "What does that mean?" "It means you're free to go about your life. But Mr. Foster, whatever you did or didn't do to Mr. Madsen, I'd suggest you let the federal authorities handle things from here." "Understood." I hung up the phone and allowed myself a moment of pure relief. It was finally over. Stefan's last desperate gambit had failed, and he was now facing federal prosecution for crimes that would put him away for decades. That evening, I was making dinner when Emily asked me about the divorce. "Are you and Mom going to get back together?" I knelt down to her level, looking into eyes that were so much like mine. "No, sweetheart. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes that can't be fixed. Your mom and I are going to live in different places now." "Because she was mean to you?" I was surprised by her directness. "What makes you say that?" "I heard her on the phone sometimes. She said mean things about you to her friends. I didn't like it." I hugged my daughter, marveling at her wisdom and perception. "Sometimes people say things they don't mean when they're unhappy, but that doesn't make it okay." "Will I still see Mom?" "Of course. She loves you very much, and she'll always be your mother. We just won't all live together anymore." Emily nodded solemnly, processing this information with the resilience that children somehow possess. "Dad?" "Yes?" "I'm glad you're not going anywhere." "I'm not going anywhere, sweetheart. I promise." 3 months later, the divorce was finalized. Marissa had pled guilty to identity theft charges and received probation in exchange for her cooperation with the federal investigation. She was working as a receptionist at a dental office, trying to rebuild her life from scratch. Stefan was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison for wire fraud, identity theft, and racketeering. His criminal operation had affected over 200 families, and the restitution payments would keep him in debt for the rest of his life. The other women from the Ladies Who Lunch group had scattered. Some were divorced, others were in counseling with their husbands. All of them were dealing with the consequences of their choices. I kept the house, got primary custody of Emily, and slowly, piece by piece, began to rebuild my life from the ground up. The place felt different now, quieter, lighter, as if the walls themselves were finally able to breathe without the weight of secrets pressing against them. The revenge had been satisfying in ways I hadn't fully expected, a kind of sharp, cleansing fire that burned away the rot. But in the end, the real victory turned out to be something far simpler, almost disarmingly simple. I was free. Free from lies, free from manipulation, free from that constant silent alarm ringing in the back of my mind, telling me something was wrong, terribly wrong, even when I couldn't put it into words. Emily and I gradually developed new routines, new traditions, new inside jokes and bedtime rituals, whole new little worlds that belonged only to us. We figured out new ways of being a family, a different kind of family, one not held together by forced smiles or hollow promises, but by honesty and trust. She was thriving at school, making new friends, laughing more often, and slowly adjusting to the reality of her parents' divorce. It was a process, some days easier than others, but children have a way of growing toward the sun when you give them enough light. One evening, as we sat at the kitchen table doing homework together, the smell of hot cocoa drifting through the house, she paused and looked up from her math problems. Her pencil hovered in midair, her little brow furrowed the way it always did when she was thinking hard about something bigger than numbers. "Dad?" she asked softly. "Do you think Mom is sorry for what she did?" I set down the dish towel I had been folding and took a moment before answering. "I think she is, sweetheart. I really do. But being sorry doesn't always fix things." She considered that for a moment. "Like when I break something and I say sorry but it's still broken?" "Exactly like that," I said, amazed, and a little heartbroken at how easily she distilled a year of chaos into one simple truth. She nodded, seemingly satisfied with the explanation, and returned to her homework, her pencil scratching gently across the page. I watched my daughter work, her hair falling over her forehead, and I thought about the long and painful journey that had brought us to this point. The marriage was over, truly over this time. The revenge was complete, the lies exposed, and the criminals who had poisoned my life were now facing justice in a system that, for once, seemed to be working as it should. For the first time in over a year, maybe longer, I felt genuinely at peace. Not the fragile peace that comes from temporary distractions or denial, but something deeper, like a lake finally settling after a storm. The joke, the stupid joke that had started everything, seemed like a lifetime ago. Marissa's cruel comment about naming a baby after her worst enemy had been said casually, carelessly, with that smug laugh she always used when she thought she was the center of the universe. But that throwaway moment had revealed something I had spent years trying not to see, the truth about who she really was. In trying to make me the punchline of her life, she had written the setup for her own downfall, and she never even saw it coming. But the real punchline was simpler than any joke. I'd won, and not through violence or threats or illegal schemes. I had won through patience, through intelligence, through refusing to let someone else define my worth, through the willingness to fight for what mattered most, even when it would have been easier to walk away and pretend none of it had happened. My daughter was safe, my future was secure, my enemies were defeated, and I was no longer a supporting character in someone else's twisted narrative. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. Sometimes the best revenge is getting free. Outside, rain began to fall against the windows, a gentle tapping like fingertips asking to come in. But inside, our house was warm and bright, full of quiet, steady life. Emily finished her homework, stretched her arms above her head, and looked at me with that spark she always gets when she's excited. "Dad, can we watch a movie together?" "Sure," I said, settling onto the couch beside her as she grabbed her favorite blanket. "What do you want to watch?" "Something funny," she said immediately. "I like it when we laugh together." I smiled and pulled her close, feeling her small heartbeat against my side. "Me too, sweetheart." Me too. As the opening credits rolled, I found myself thinking about laughter. Real laughter, not the sharp-edged kind that people use as a weapon, but the kind that spills out without permission, the kind shared between people who love and trust each other. It was so different from the cruel laughter that had once filled these rooms, the mocking jokes that had hidden such ugly truths. This laughter was gentle, honest, and healing in ways I didn't know I needed. This was better. This was real. This was home. And for the first time in a very long time, I wasn't waiting for anything to fall apart. I wasn't bracing for the next lie, the next betrayal, the next disappointment. I was simply there, with my daughter tucked against my side, a movie playing in front of us, and a future wide open and bright as a new morning. Freedom didn't feel like fireworks or sirens. Freedom felt like this.